This video will go over two different things to sort of understand a scholarly article and how to read a scholarly article. So first we'll sort of look at the main architecture of an article and the different sections that you'll typically find in most scholarly articles. And then we'll go over some reading strategies for reading and understanding scholarly articles for your research. So here I have an article that is in PDF form. You might also see scholarly articles that look more like web pages, but they'll typically still be structured the same. Here I can see the title of the journal that this article is in, its date, the author title, and the authors and where the authors work and do research. So this is all already relevant information for me because I can sort of understand what type of discipline perhaps this article is related to. I could even look into the authors to see what else they've written about and just get an idea of what their sort of research methods are, or research interests rather. Scrolling down, again, I've got the title and authors, but here we have the abstract. And most scholarly articles will have an abstract, and these can be super helpful for you in understanding an article and whether or not it's relevant to your research without even having to read the whole article. So an abstract is a summary of the article, and unlike fiction, a fiction book, you get the end right here at the beginning. You don't have to read through it to know what happens. And that also is great because, again, it can help you determine if this article is relevant to your research topic. You'll see there are also keywords listed, which is awesome, not only, again, for assessing whether this is relevant to a research topic, but also it's giving you ideas for other keywords to try searching for similar articles. And then scrolling down, we're finally at the actual article. So here we have an introduction to the topic of the article, and then you'll often find what's called a literature review. And what this is the authors have gone through and done a bunch of research on articles and studies that are related to this topic. And what this is basically establishing is that the authors have done their homework and they understand the topic and other ways that people have looked at this issue or studied it, and also helps explain what they're building, the research that they're building off of for their own study. So, and you'll notice here there are tons of citations within this article. And that's, again, part of the literature review because they've gone through all of the previous literature on the topic and are sort of summarizing it here. Then we have the methods section. So the methods section is going to explain how the authors went about researching their particular sort of research question and how they tried to answer that question. So they'll often explain what they did. So in this case, they used a survey using specific formats, and they talk about how it got approval for research and how they sort of looked at the data after they did the survey. So really going into detail of how they sort of set up their research and how they came to the conclusions that they've come to. Which brings us to the results section. So this is the section that sort of explains what they found through their study. And you might often find figures like this with charts, or you might find data sets in tables and things like that. And then these will sort of typically be further explained within the text of the article. So here again, we can see a table explaining some of the data that they looked at in this particular study. And then we have the discussion section. So this is where they sort of discuss the results of their research in relationship to all of those related studies that were mentioned in the literature review. So they're making that connection between the research that was already done and their particular research for this study. And then scrolling on down some more, Yes, scholarly articles typically can be long. Okay, and here we have the conclusion. So again, just wrapping things up, they'll often mention maybe any things that were missing from their particular study, areas for further research, how people might be able to use whatever results they got from this particular study. So just wrapping things up. And then another important area is the references section. So not only is this a way for you to sort of look at where the authors look to for their own research, but also if this article was relevant to you and you want to find more articles that are related to this topic, you could just look through this references list and read through some of these articles, and there are also potential resources for you for your research topic. So it's always a good idea to look at the references section. And that's the makeup of a typical research article. Now, as you could see, as I was scrolling through, there are lots of references. The article was long. It uses a lot of, statistics and math and charts and graphs, and it can feel overwhelming and might be difficult to read. And if you have to find a lot of resources for your research, that can also feel daunting because you have to do a lot of reading and finding articles and things like that. So there are certain strategies that you can employ to try to minimize the amount of time you spend reading articles that maybe ultimately are not relevant to your research. So when you find an article that you think might be helpful to you, rather than just reading it from beginning to end, I would recommend you first start with the abstract. So read through the abstract and get an idea for what the article is about, what the conclusions were, and then if it doesn't seem relevant to your research, you can just stop right there and move on to a different article. If it does seem like this article might be helpful for you in your research, skip down to the conclusion of the article. And that's where they'll talk about the results of the study, how it can be applied in the field or discipline, and sort of giving all of that relevance of this article. So if you read the conclusion and still feel like it's relevant for you, you could then go back up to the introduction of the article, which again is going to give you sort of an overview of what the article is about, its importance in the field, and things like that. If that still feels relevant, then go ahead and start reading through the article. You could read the first sentence of each paragraph, look at the references, and if you still are feeling good about this article, go ahead and read it from beginning to end. And be sure and take notes and keep track of areas of the article that feel extra relevant. Maybe highlight potential areas that you can paraphrase or quote, and always grab the citation. Another nice thing about scholarly articles is if you are working with a citation generator, which a lot of these articles are have citation generators uh, associated with them, but you also typically can get the citation right in the text of the article. So you could just copy and paste this citation for your references list. And those are just some tips on how to read scholarly articles.